Hi guys, you're here with me, Jen the Taxidermy Witch, and we are doing another episode of lore. This one I found is not again, because the last one we did was the Axeman, and it was related to witchcraft because of American History Coven. But this one is related to witchcraft directly, so I put my newest thrift up here, which is a very amazing witch statue that I found. Look at her feet. They're so creepy and cool. She is so cool. I love her. So there she is. And we're doing some Saturday Night Lore. This one is not about murder and grossness. So if you're new to my channel and you're new to Saturday Night Lore, normally Saturday Night Lore, which I read from this book here, is pretty vicious and gruesome. However, this one is just about witchcraft, okay? So let's get to reading. Let's get to risking and reading. Okay, so this one is called Rise Above. And I'm going to read it to you. Are you guys enjoying my Saturday Night Lore? If you are, please comment below. Okay, this story is called Rise Above. It's amazing how easily people are drawn to simple answers. Complexity just isn't much fun. Maybe complexity offers us less hope, or perhaps it just reminds us of how small and powerless we are on this giant rock. Simplicity is the opposite of all of that. When a tsunami crashed against the coast of an island 1,000 years ago, it was easy to believe that the gods were angry and punishing its inhabitants. The truth is a lot more complex. Tectonic plates, earthquakes, seismic waves, and all of that. And therefore a lot less easy to grasp. Simplicity is sexy. So it should come as no surprise that much of folklore is an engine that runs on the power of simplicity. And no topic represents that more fully than witchcraft. Completely agree. As we've already seen, whenever something odd or unexplainable happens in our community, the conclusion was easy to reach. Someone in town was a witch, right? I think even not today, but up until like the 1920s or 30s, that was probably a good explanation of the non-explainable. My opinion. That's the world that Grace was born into. She was one of the early settlers of Virginia, the daughter of a Scottish carpenter and his English wife. Unlike her parents, though, she was born in the New World. In 1680, Grace married a local farmer, James Sherwood. Her father gave them some land as a wedding gift, and the couple settled into life there in a small farm. A year later, her father passed away and left the rest of his property. Nothing extravagant, but 200 acres was still something. Let me say, 200 acres is absolutely something, but so much work. So much work. The stories say that Grace was unusually beautiful, tall, and full of laughter, the sort of woman who stood out in her Puritan English colony. She turned heads, which probably didn't go a long way toward helping the neighbor ladies like her. Timeless. Still, life needed living. She and her husband James raised 3 sons there on the farm, and it was hard work. Everything was hard work in the late 1600s, though. It was hard work to stay healthy, to work the land, to fill the beliefs of 3 hungry growing boys, and to please everyone around her. Life was hard. Grace spread herself thin, too. She had all the normal roles that came with being a wife and mother, but she also helped out in the community as a midwife. Part of her garden was devoted to a large number of medicinal herbs, and she used them often to help others with illness and pain. Some people didn't care for that. It smacked of dark magic, of someone who was playing with the natural order of things. Are you fucking kidding me? Using herbs that the universe and the earth gives you to help cure somebody's sickness, illness, ailment, and health? Are you kidding me that goes against the natural orders of things? What universe do we live in? What universe are the Puritans trying to create? I'm sorry, but let me go on. Okay. And it was not a major leap of logic to assume that she was fluent in spells, too. So when one of her neighbors, Richard Capps, claimed that Grace had killed his bull with one of those spells, they went to court. That is insane. A witch killed my bull, let's go to court. That would never happen today, honestly. Like, would it? Would it in different parts of the world? I'm not sure. But in America, I really could not see that happening. Okay, and it was not a major leap of logic to assume that she was fluent in spells too. So when one of the neighbors, Richard Capps, claimed that Grace had killed a bull with one of the spells, they went to court. Thankfully, the evidence was non-existent, so the case was dismissed. Grace and James sued Capps for defamation, but lost. A year later, in 1698, it was John Gerbine's turn. Only this time it was his pigs and his cotton crop she had bewitched. The case later that year, it had repeated again when Elizabeth Barnes accused Grace of transforming into a black cat that entered her home through a keyhole. Grace somehow lost that slander case as well. Each time it happened, she and her husband were forced to pay the court fees, which only served to drive them further into poverty. And then, in 1701, James died, leaving her vulnerable to future attacks. 4 years later, it happened again. Her neighbor Elizabeth Hill physically attacked her, and maybe it was because of the bruises and scratches on Grace's body, but this time, she was able to win her assault case against Hill. She walked away with the equivalent of about $200 in today's currency. Wow. That's shit, you know? But she also ticked off a few people in the process. A few months later, Elizabeth Hill returned, blaming her recent miscarriage on Grace. And the women went to court. But March 1706, 2 separate juries were called to serve the trial. One was sent to Grace's home to search for evidence of her witchcraft, while the other was tasked with examining Grace's body for witches' marks. On March 7th, Grace was stripped naked by 12 local women who examined her from head to toe. That process could not have been pretty. I mean, think of the harassment. Think of the bullshit that Grace went through. Oh my god. Looking for dark spots and raised parts of her skin. You know, things we might call moles or skin tags or freckles. And surprise, surprise, they found some. Oh, and the women in charge of this gang of angry mole hunters? None other than Elizabeth Barnes, the woman who had failed to get Grace arrested 8 years earlier. Someone holding a grudge, I think. I won't bore you with the court details. There were more trials. There was a bit of controversy and a clear lack of solid evidence, and yet the judge felt that something had to be done. So on July 10th, Grace Sherwood was taken to a plantation at the mouth of the Lay Heaven River. A crowd gathered to watch that day as Grace was stripped naked and examined by a group of women. Though this time they were looking for tools Grace might have hidden on her body because they were about to do something insane. They pushed her out into a boat with the sheriff, and he rowed it about 200 yards out into the water, and then after her hands and feet were bound to each other, and a 13-pound Bible was tethered to her neck, she was brought to the side of the boat. Their logic was about as solid as a cloud, and should sound insanely familiar to fans of Monty Python. I'm going to take a pause and tell you this. As I love everything British, I've only seen bits and pieces of Monty Python. Now I have to sit down and watch it, so after this video, guess what I'm going to do? However, when reading this, before I started this video, I did watch the scene from Monty Python. It's fucking hilarious. It's not exactly like this, but it's a lot similar, and I'm glad that they talked about it here. So if you've not seen that scene, if I remember, which I probably won't, I'll link it below. However, you could just YouTube search Monty Python witchcraft scene, and there's a 4 or 5 minute video that will show you everything you need to need what I'm referring to here. So I'm going to reread the beginning of this. Their logic was about as solid as a cloud and should sound insanely familiar to fans of Monty Python. If she floated, she was a witch. Drowning was the only acceptable proof of her innocence. Wow! If you take an innocent person out and they drown, either way you die, right? If you drown, you're innocent. If you float, you're a witch. Like, really? What kind of justice system is this? It's not too much different from how chaotic and non-existent today's justice system is, in my opinion. I'm sorry, but in my opinion. Okay, where am I at? Grace Sherwood plunged into the dark waters of Lynnhaven River around 10 a.m. on July 10th, 1706, and like many women before her, this was the end. The delicate balance of life and death hinged on the crazy notion that witches were so immune to Christian baptism that they actually floated. And so, with a firm shove, into the river she went. Grace floats. But Grace was stronger than the fear that filled the community there in Virginia as her body sank to the depths of the river, as the shock of the cold water on her naked skin and the burn of her lungs overwhelmed her. She fought back. She managed to unite herself and shrug off the weight of that enormous Bible, and then she swam free. It was a sign of her guilt, though, so she was thrown in jail the very same day. She beat part of the system only to fall prey to the rest of it. At least she lived, you know? It's twisted and wrong, I know, but to the people of her community, it was logic. What crazy fucking times, man. Crazy fucking times. And simple, as we've seen, it's a lot easier to believe. Grace appears again, roughly 8 years later. That's when most historians think she was released from jail. She reclaimed her property, paid her back taxes, and then settled into her life alone. Her boys had grown up and moved on. God, sad. Brr. And it seems that the accusations were gone as well. The rest of her life was relatively quiet, and I have to imagine she was glad for that. She passed away in 1740 at the ripe old age of 80. I like Grace. She managed to do something that few others had in her era. She faced the test designed to punish the innocent, and she got away. Yes, our world is still full of dangerously irrational people that allow hate and jealousy in their own deep insecurities that drive them toward monstrous actions, but maybe that's not the inescapable prison it appears to be. Maybe like Grace Sherwood, we can rise above it all and swim to safety. Only one can hope. So, that's the end of the story, and I hope that that's like some kind of cool message to you guys that like, just take the moral of the story and build with it. Like, say your truths. Say your truths. Be truth. Be that bridge between the gap. I mean, everyone 99% of people, lie on a daily basis. Bridge the gap and be that witch that tells only truths and firmly believes that speaking your truth will keep you healthy, happy, and secure. I feel like this story is really motivating. And so this story was Rise Above, which is so fitting. And we're reading out of Lore, Wicked Mortals, The World of Lore, by Aaron Mahnke. Aaron, Aaron, Mahnke. So I really love this book. I'm so glad you joined me again, Jen the Taxidermy Witch, while we talk about lore on Saturday night. Have a beautiful evening, you guys.